Okay, now, real quickly before we get started with the whiteboards, some of you guys are still not enrolled in my science class on Ed Puzzle. This is the code to get in, ZATPOHC. If you have not enrolled in that yet, I think a lot of you guys have. I've seen a lot of your names. Please go enroll in that because I'm going to start giving you guys assignments, and people that aren't enrolled in my class, they're not going to be able to do the assignments. So make sure that you log into that. Who said
I tried to, but it said the password was wrong.
Who's that, Alana?
Yes.
Alana, try it again. You guys got to try it again because
Alan,
hey,
I'm in already.
I already have written in a notebook and it's already running.
okay, if you're not in here, go back and try it again because I went and did it and enrolled myself as a student.
No, Mr. Allen, I did write that in this whiteboard, and I wrote it to a notebook so I wouldn't forget it.
Okay, well you got to type it into the website, honey. So Alana, try it again, girl, because I went there and tried to enroll myself as a student and it let me right in. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe you need to refresh it or something. What, Caleb? Well, y'all are not using your NHCS account then, because it should let you right in. It should, but this is the code, so go get it done. All right, real quick whiteboard review. Guys, y'all gotta mute yourselves.
Wait,
Genesis, you gotta mute yourself.
oh, okay.
All right, everybody got their whiteboards ready? All right, let's get ready. So,
Yep.
name one thing that the atmosphere does for us on Earth. What does it do for us? Okay? Does everybody have something written down? All right, so this is what I've got. It protects us, okay? It holds in our heat and it holds in our oxygen. Now, how does it protect us? It protects us because they are invisible layers of armor that kind of like keep us from getting hit by asteroids and meteors, okay? And it also protects us from the sun. The sun's rays are extremely violent, and if all the sun's rays came down and were able to touch the surface of the earth, then it might hurt our eyes, it might give us these really, really horrible sunburns, and it might really burn you up. So that's mainly what it does, okay? Now, I want you to, we're gonna go back a couple of days. Which pressure is the one that causes all the bad weather? Which pressure? Low pressure, okay? Low pressure. Should not forget that. Now, write down for me 3 forms of precipitation. 3 forms of precipitation. All right, let's see what you got. I've got all 5 of them right there, guys. Rain, snow, sleet, hail, and freezing rain, okay? The one that falls in the summer that's frozen is gonna be the hail, all right? Okay, now, that was an okay review. We gotta make sure we're reviewing a little bit more next week. But what I'm going to talk to you today about are the first 2 layers of the atmosphere. Like I told you, there's 5 layers. And with these layers, you cannot see them. They are invisible. But these 5 layers exist right above us. It's kind of like, you guys ever seen the middle of a gobstopper where it's got all the lines in the middle? Well, if you have, and that's kind of like what the atmosphere looks like around us. It's just clear. It's like I don't know, like on Star Wars, you know, like a force field. that's kind of like protecting us. Well, the first two layers are the most interesting layers in my opinion, but the most interesting one is the one that we live in, okay? So the first layer is going to be something we call the troposphere, okay? And that word tropo, remember I told you to remember the word tropical? T-R-O-P means like a really nice place to go visit, really blue water, somewhere you can wear your bathing suit all the time, all year round. You don't have to worry about it getting cold. So the tropo, and then sphere means circle. So the troposphere surrounds us. This is the layer that we live in, and this is basically the most dangerous layer of them all. And the reason it is because 75 to 85% of all the atmosphere is located here. And when I say 75 to 80% of all the atmosphere, let me tell you what I mean by that. Almost all the oxygen on Earth is found in this layer, which is a good thing because we live here, right? You have to breathe oxygen in order to live. So most of the oxygen is in this level. Another thing that's mostly in this level is water. Okay, water vapor. We have almost all the water vapor in this level. And what does water vapor come from? It comes from weather. We have almost all the weather in this layer. Okay, and not only that, what else comes out of, where does the precipitation come from? It comes out of clouds. So all the clouds are in this layer for the most part. There's a few in the next layer that we're going to talk about, but it is a really, really volatile place we live in, okay? Because we've got all the clouds, all the water vapor, all the dust, all the oxygen, and all this stuff mixes up, and it causes kind of like this soupy mess that we live in. I mean, the other layers don't have tornadoes. They don't have hurricanes. They don't have tsunamis. They don't have earthquakes. They're just big, huge layers of air. There's no land there. So we live in a really crazy, crazy layer. The next layer is extremely different from this layer. So we live in this really crazy, unstable area where we don't ever know what's going to happen. We could have a thunderstorm. We could have a hurricane come and hit us. A tornado could come and hit us. But this next layer is very, very, very different, okay? The next layer is something called the stratosphere. And you guys might have heard this word before. They use it on movies sometimes, and they're like, hey, I'm gonna knock you up into the stratosphere. Meaning they're gonna knock somebody out and knock you up into the air. The stratosphere is pretty high up, but it's a drastically different area. So this is where jets want to fly. And the reason jets want to fly in this area of the atmosphere is because it's really stable. That means there's very little oxygen, there's very little wind, there's hardly any weather. So there's nothing for airplanes to run into and make your airplane ride real bumpy. Everything up there is nice and stable because there's no wind. There's no wind, there's very, very little oxygen. And if you actually got in an airplane, they're pumping oxygen into that plane so that you can breathe. If they didn't pump oxygen into the plane as you were flying in it, you would all die. And you would die because there's no oxygen at 35,000 feet. You would croak. It's also very, very dry. There's no water vapor. There's no clouds. There's no weather. Okay, so even though they're right beside one another, they're a drastically different spot. Really drastically different. So one thing I want to show you today is a video, okay? And we're going to watch two videos. Now this first video is this English fella. Whoops. Why is that up there? Hold on. There we go. This first one is this English fellow, and he's gonna go and he's gonna fly through the troposphere, which is the one we live in, and then he's gonna fly through the stratosphere. And then there's gonna be a little part at the end that I'm gonna stop, and we're gonna talk about this fella that did something incredibly remarkable for the time. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the video once that starts. All right, so let's watch this video real quick. Hold on one second. Let me make sure my volume's all the way up. All right, here we go. Can y'all hear that? You hear it? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so here he is taking off.
The atmosphere that surrounds our planet is made up of 4 key layers, each very different. Although I'm above the clouds, I'm still at the very bottom, in a layer called the troposphere.
That's where we live, guys.
It's a narrow band, usually more than 6 miles across.
Shh.
The troposphere is a rich soup of oxygen-rich air. It's unstable, chaotic, unpredictable, but life depends upon it. And in just a couple of minutes, I'll be leaving it behind. And now I'm 40,000 feet above the Earth.
So he's about 8 miles up in the air. All right. So he's going from the troposphere and he's going through this invisible layer and he's going up to the stratosphere. Okay? So there he is. They're flying through the stratosphere, okay?
Feet, and we're about to cross an invisible boundary in the atmosphere. We're leaving behind the first layer, the troposphere, and entering the stratosphere.
All right, so I want to look, and I want you to see this right here. There's the jet, and look at that steam coming out of the back of his engine. Remember, we learned that in the water cycle. The hot and the cold mixing. That engine on that jet is super duper hot. Where he's flying is super duper cold. When those two mix together, what gets made? A cloud, okay? I don't know if this cloud will stay up there, but that's how clouds are made, all right? Let's keep going.
A very different place. Here, the air
See?
is stable and
No weather.
exceptionally dry, so there's virtually no weather. The stratosphere is home to the ozone layer, which reduces the amount of lethal solar radiation reaching the Earth. We've reached 50,000 feet. Nearly 80% of the mass of gases that make up the atmosphere are below me.
Absolutely nothing above me. Black sky. Black sky, wow, dark blue. This is the highest I've ever been.
But almost 50 years ago, one man went much, much higher than me, and he experienced the atmosphere in a completely different way.
All right, so this fella right here is in a jet, and he's protected. Now, let me tell you a little bit of backstory before I push play on this. How many of you guys know what an astronaut is? Do all of you know what an astronaut is? Okay, so before we landed on the moon, we didn't know very much about space. Not very much at all. So everything was kind of like an experiment. You know, when we first landed on the moon, they didn't really know if those guys were going to make it or not. They were like, hey, you know, we sent monkeys up there and they've come back alive. We figure if we send you up there, you might come back alive. Well, they needed people to test this stuff out. So this next man you're about to see is a man that did something and he sacrificed basically his body. He could have died very easily doing this. He sacrificed his body doing this because they wanted to know when astronauts were coming back from space, what would happen to their bodies? Could they survive going through the atmosphere without dying? So this guy right here you're about to see, and this is a long time ago. This was before Mr. Allen was born. This is like 1960 or so. This young man, well, this man, he's still alive. No, actually, he died about 2 years ago. His name is Joseph Kittinger, and he was a test pilot for the Navy. And I don't know if you guys know what a test pilot does, but a test pilot tests airplanes that have never been flown before, which is kind of crazy. Would you want to go and test fly something that goes up into the air and it could blow up on you, or it wouldn't be able to steer? So it was a very daring job. So this guy that you're about to see, he volunteered to take a hot air balloon all the way up to the stratosphere and to float all the way up there and then jump out to see if he could survive this landing, because they were really concerned about these astronauts, the ship coming apart and them having to free fall from really high in the atmosphere. They wanted to see, hey, can you survive something like this? So what he did was remarkable, all right? And I want you guys to kind of watch it and see what he did, and then we're gonna talk about it, because remember, when we're talking about the atmosphere, we're talking about layers of air. And in this layer we live in, there is pretty much all the oxygen you can have. We have tons of oxygen. We don't ever have a hard time breathing because there's always oxygen present, unless you go somewhere where there's, like underwater or something. But when you go to the stratosphere, there is not any air. There's very, very little oxygen. If we went up there and we tried to hang out, there was a picnic table up there, and for some reason we could float up there, we wouldn't be able to breathe. We wouldn't be able to talk to one another. We would end up dying because we wouldn't be able to get a good breath of air, all right? So just watch what he did, and then we're gonna talk about it, because there's some really cool stuff I want you to understand. Are there any questions? Faith, what's your question, girl?
So, oh, okay. It's not really a question.
Okay, just
It's more a comment. So if, well, I guess it is a question. So if he did ended up making it, would he? If a motor hit his jet, would he basically fall back down?
well, yeah, you're gonna fall back down because gravity's gonna pull you. But there's no air up there. Blake, go ahead. Blake, go ahead, bud. Blake, were you raising your hand? Okay, so let's watch this guy.
On August 16th, 1960, long before man had set foot on the moon, military pilot Joe Kittinger took a solo journey to explore the heavens.
So there he is right there. And there he is going up in the balloon, 1960. Okay, so this was 60 years ago.
Not in a rocket, but in a giant helium balloon to determine the risks of high altitude bailouts.
So here he is up in the stratosphere, going up through the troposphere.
The balloon took Kittinger over 19 miles into the stratosphere. That's twice the height that I reached. Then
Okay, before I let you see what happened, how many of you guys have ridden in a car, which I know most of you have, and you roll down the window and you stick your arm out and you can see the hair on your arm or your sleeve kind of like floating in the wind, and it flutters in the wind? Have you guys ever seen that before?
I do it all the time.
Yeah, or even if you ride your bike. If you ride your bike down the street, maybe your clothes you can hear your clothes kind of moving, your hair moves back and forth. Well, that's because there's air.
Yes.
And that's the reason that things move, is because there's air, there's oxygen present. So I want you guys to listen to this, and then I'm going to talk to you about it, okay?
Kittinger did something astonishing. He jumped. This is the actual moment.
So he's like 12 miles up in the air.
Reaching a speed of almost 620 miles an hour.
So did y'all hear that? They said he was falling at 620 miles an hour. Okay, that's 3 times faster than the cars that you watch on TV go around that track. 600 miles an hour, and he's just sitting there in this suit and going 600 miles an hour straight towards Earth.
And yet he had no sense of speed.
I had no ripple of the fabric, pressure suit, and it was a very weird sensation. I had no visual reference of anything, so I thought I was really suspended in space.
That's him. That's the camera that he's. All right, now.
Kittinger had fallen at great speed as he plunged towards
Now, when he's falling, can you hear anything other than the man talking? Can you hear any wind? No.
Yes.
I can't hear any wind. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what you're hearing because I can't hear any wind. He's got his microphone on. There's no wind. There's no like rushing. He's going 650 miles an hour. Don't you think he'd be able to hear some wind going past his ears? I mean, when you guys ride your bike down the road, you can hear wind going past your ears. He's going 650.
He's not gonna survive that.
Well, let's keep watching. Let's keep watching.
Floating over a New Mexico desert.
Unless he got a parachute.
Well, why would he do it without a parachute, kiddo?
Finally,
Yeah.
he his parachute.
I mean, oh no, I didn't see a parachute with that guy.
Y'all gotta mute yourselves.
Parachute.
Free falling.
Parachute. But then he ejects it.
Just 15 minutes after he jumped,
Please quit talking.
Jim was back on the ground.
All right, so there he is. He made it. He survived it.
Falling from the upper
Listen to what he says.
stratosphere, Kittinger had plummeted through 99% of the atmosphere's mass.
15 minutes before, I'd been at the edge of space, and now, to me, I was in the Garden of Eden.
Then he smokes a cigarette.
We really don't appreciate what a beautiful planet we have.
Although Kittinger had jumped from high in the stratosphere, he still didn't reach the furthest edge of our atmosphere.
All right, y'all keep watching. We're almost done.
Above the stratosphere are more protective layers, so wispy and tenuous that they barely exist, but are vital for our planet. About 30 miles beyond the stratosphere lies the third layer, the mesosphere.
This is the mesosphere.
It's this layer that helps.
And we're not going to learn about this today because I want to show, I got to take some notes for you real quick. So, real quickly, let's talk about some of the things we know about the troposphere, okay? So, here's Earth, okay? And right here is going to be the troposphere. Now, who lives in the troposphere?
Us.
Yeah, we live in the troposphere because the troposphere is located where land is, okay? So remember, the troposphere is the lowest layer, okay? It's the lowest one. It's the one we live in. It's super duper thin. We live in a really thin part. All the other parts of the atmosphere are really wide, okay? So we have almost 80% of the entire atmosphere down here. And even though we're super thin, the reason we have 80% is because we have all the oxygen and all the air for the most part. And that's why we have 80% of the atmosphere, is because we have the things that we have around us to live. We gotta have air and we gotta have oxygen or we die, all right? Now here's something you might not remember. All of the weather happens here, okay? If you went up to the stratosphere, there's no way you would encounter a tornado. You would not run into a hurricane in the stratosphere because there are no clouds. There's no weather. So with that being said, there are no clouds either. Oh, I'm sorry. All the clouds are here. I thought we were doing the stratosphere. All the clouds are here because we have weather, okay? So those are the specifics for the troposphere. Now, if you go to the stratosphere, which is what I'm about to draw, then it's a very, very different place, okay? So the troposphere is the one we live in. Super thin. I'm just going to put tropo right here because you know. The stratosphere is right above us. And even though we live in a really volatile place, very unsettled, the stratosphere is the exact opposite. There is no air, okay? It's very stable, which means there's not a lot of crazy things happening in the stratosphere. They don't have to worry about a tornado hitting. They don't have to worry about these violent winds coming and tearing your house up because there are no houses anyway, all right? There is no weather at all, and there are no clouds. So think about that. Just this invisible layer of air. You got something really crazy happening where we live, and then you go through this one little layer of air, and then it's the completely different opposite of what we're used to. So you couldn't live in the stratosphere, all right? And not only that, since there's no weather and no clouds, it's very dry. So everything would dry out up there. Now, before I let you go today, and you don't have to watch this next video if you don't want to, but let me give you a little backstory about this next video. This next guy he wanted to do what Joseph Kittinger did, but he wanted to go even higher, okay? And you guys might have heard of this guy's name. His name is Felix Baumgartner. And Felix Baumgartner is kind of like a stunt guy. He wanted to go out and he wanted to prove that he could go even higher than Joseph Kittinger. So what he did was he did something really smart. He went out and he found the guy you just watched the video on, Joseph Kittinger, the one that jumped out of that hot air balloon. And he was like, hey, can you please train me on what to do when I'm falling out of this balloon? Because I want to see if I can break your record. Well, Joseph Kittinger was like, absolutely, I'll teach you. He was like, I want you to break the record. I want you to go up there and jump higher than I did. Well, now that it's like 2015 when he did it, technology's gotten so much better that he had a really great balloon. His equipment was a lot nicer. So he went up even higher than Joseph Kittinger did just to try to break a world record. So if you don't want to watch this video, you don't have to. It's 8 minutes. You guys can go ahead and leave if you want to, but those of you that want to watch it, I'm gonna go ahead and play it. It's 8 minutes long, but it's pretty cool because it shows him from his balloon. He's like 25 miles up in the air. You can see the curve of the earth, and this guy drops. I think his highest rate of speed was 800 miles an hour. And the reason he got to that speed through the stratosphere is because there's no air stopping him. There's no oxygen stopping him. So that's why he got this really, really high speed. As soon as he hit air in the troposphere, he slowed down, all right? So you guys, if you don't want to watch it, you don't have to, but I'm going to play it for everybody that does, okay? See if I can find it. Oh, here we go.
I see this one.
All right, here we go. What? Why was that? Oh, there we go. So this is the beginning, and they talk about, there's Joseph Kittinger right there, the one you just saw jump, okay? And that was in 1960. So what you're about to watch is 2015. So look at all that stuff Joseph Kittinger had to wear when he went to the stratosphere to jump. So he went up 20 miles, which is a long way, okay? So this is 52 years later, okay? And there's Felix Baumgartner hot air balloon right there. There's the window, and there's the Earth. So he's 25 miles above Earth's surface.
Mr. Al,
Yeah.
Zion wants to say hi.
Who?
Zion.
Oh, you tell Zion I said hello. I hope he's doing his work. I hope you're doing your work, buddy. Hey, what's up, old man? Got you all grown up. Look at you, man. All right. So this is all his stuff he's putting on. Let me get to the good part. All right, so here he is inside of his hot air balloon. He's getting ready to open the door. Okay, so this is way more sophisticated than what Joseph Kittinger had. Okay, this is gonna scare you. Well, it scares me because I don't like heights, but this is kind of crazy. All right, so he's disconnecting his oxygen. Because remember, there is no oxygen where he is. He's way up in the atmosphere. So he just opened the door. There's the frost coming off of the parachute. I mean, off the hot air balloon because it's so cold up there. And there he is. And there's the ground. So he's a long, long, long way up. He is almost to the point where gravity has stopped pulling on him. So he's a long, long way up. Okay, so there he is getting ready to make his jump. He's got to get out to the door. Okay? And right above him, there's the sun and there's space. The black is space. There he is right there getting out. And look at all the stuff he's got on him. Now look at the curve of the earth, guys. He said, you got to get up really high to understand how small you really are. And he said, I'm coming home now. So he's getting ready to jump. And there he goes. Now it shows him from the ground and you can see he looks like a little tic-tac going through the air. And look, his spacesuit isn't fluttering. Nothing's flapping in the wind because there is no air where he is. Look, he's falling at like 800 miles an hour and nothing's even flapping. So that'll prove to you that there's no oxygen up where he is. And look, look at the curve of the earth. And it looks like he's going really slow, doesn't it? He is going like 700-800 miles an hour right here. Look at the curve of the earth. Look at how high up he is. Now, if you guys listen, you'll be able to hear it when he hits the troposphere. You'll start hearing wind. And that's him hitting air. But right now, he's got his microphone on. Do you hear any air? You see his suit flapping? You see anything flapping? No. There's no air, no wind. It's really dry. It almost looks like he's floating. It's a good day to do it too. There's no clouds. All right. So airspeed, he's going 600 miles an hour. Okay. He's about to go 700 miles an hour. You guys can see it right here, 700. All right, 750. He's going 800 miles an hour right now. 820, 830, 840. All right, so look, you see how his suit's starting to flap? He hit the troposphere. He's starting to hit oxygen. Look at his suit flapping. Look at him starting to get out of control. That's because he has hit air, and air is turbulent. He says he's about to pass out. Now he's going 500 miles an hour. So he's slowed down considerably. His heart rate is 185. And look at how bad his suit is flapping. Okay? So that'll prove to you that we live in a really oxygen-rich place. The place he jumped from, there is no oxygen, no air at all. Okay? He's also got a lot nicer parachute than Felix Baumgartner did as well. So there he goes. He's going to pull his chute. He just said that was really tough. So Joe Kittinger's sitting there talking to him. You did an absolutely fabulous job. Couldn't have done it any better myself. So that's really cool. The guy trained him, and the guy wanted to break his record, so he's like, sure, I'll train you, no problem. I'd love for you to break my record. So there he is on the ground, looking a little bit like a snowman. So I hope you got something out of that. The reason I showed that to you is because I really wanted you guys to understand that you live in a place full of air. And man, you go right above that little invisible layer, the first one, and there is no air. And I just proved it to you because his suit wasn't even flapping. Pretty crazy, right? Blake, do you have a question, buddy? I can't hear you, man. Say it again. Man, I can't understand you, bud.
Lagging.
Man, dude, your voice is all messed up. Did you say something about him passing out? Let's try you in a minute, Blake. Anybody else got a question? Who is that? Oh, is that you? Elijah? Elijah, you got a question?
Yes.
What is it, bud?
Wouldn't they have burned up?
Well, that's a great question.
No.
Actually, you got to go up a little bit higher because the next layer up is the one we're going to talk about on Tuesday. It's called the mesosphere. That's the layer that burns up stuff. That's a really great question. I don't think he could have gone up any higher than he did because you're almost getting into space when you start getting into the mesosphere, and he maybe would have gotten caught in orbit. It's just too far to go. But he did go 5 miles higher than Joseph Kittinger did. So he broke his record by quite a bit. That's a good question, man. Very good question. Anybody else? Haley Fisher?
I just have something to say.
Sure.
I watched a movie where these little birds went up to space, and they went up to Saturn,
Yeah.
and they stopped, and then they went crashing down, and they started going in flames.
Yeah, that might be true. That definitely was a movie because I know a bird couldn't make it to Saturn. We haven't even been able to make it to Saturn yet. The closest we've gotten to Saturn is Mars, which Saturn's a long way from Mars, girl. It would take us years and years to get to Saturn. So no bird could get there, but if something could get up there and fall through, it would burn up. That's what the atmosphere is for, is to burn stuff up so that it doesn't hit us.
One of the birds were blown up into a big hot air balloon, kind of.
Huh. Yeah, that's a movie, all right. Elijah, what's your question, bud? Elijah Allanen. There you are.
Doesn't Mars have no air?
Mars has got no air, and it's kind of like our moon. There's no oxygen, there's no atmosphere really. It would be a tough place to live, for sure. That's why we can't really go right now, is because there's no water source. If you're in the sunshine on Mars, you're gonna be hitting about 1,000 degrees. And if the sun goes down and you get in the shadow of Mars, it's gonna be really, really, really cold. So you really can't handle those drastic temperature changes. And that's the problem with us going